Hey, Alicia Novin here, and today I want to tell you about 4 mistakes that I've made on the job and lived to tell the story. So here we go. The reason why I want to share these stories is not to embarrass myself, though I probably will. The truth is that everybody makes mistakes. They happen all the time. And while they seem like the biggest deal when they happen and you start to doubt yourself and your abilities, you live through them and you grow stronger for them. So I thought by sharing mine, hopefully when you run into your first mistake, you learn to take it in stride. So here we go, number 1. It was my very first job and I was about 3 weeks into it. And it was a really fun experience. We were moving very quickly. We weren't always following best practices. We didn't have source control. And one day I had to move a chunk of code up into production, which really just amounted to moving some files over FTP into the production server. And there's a bug with the application, that FTP client, and it was that it would hold your focus, your keyboard focus, even if you were in a different application. And so what happened was I was editing some text on a Word document and I hit Control A to select all the text and I hit delete and nothing happened in the application. I thought, well, that's weird. And so I did it again and I did it again and nothing was happening. And then all of a sudden I remembered, oh yeah, that FTP client has that bug. Was I connected? So I went back to the FTP client and looked and I was connected to the production server and there was nothing there. And I went to our corporate website and it wasn't loading. And as I'm thinking through this, the CFO is walking into the dev area yelling that the website is down, and it needed to be up, and he was trying to figure out what was going on. And he was going from desk to desk having people try it out. Well, luckily, the fact that we never had source control really terrified me, and I had formed the habit to just daily back up the entire code base that I was working on onto my desktop. And I had quickly then re-uploaded it once I realized what had happened, so that by the time he got back to my desk and he was asking me to try it out, I pulled up the browser, went to the website, and got to give the token line of it's working for me. So we had a total outage of about 10 minutes, but that was definitely a scary one being so early in my career. I've had the pleasure of being able to work at some pretty large organizations in my career, and one of them was working at Microsoft, where by virtue of working at such a large organization, millions of people would interact with code that you wrote, which is a really cool and thrilling experience, except when you make a mistake. And one night we were having a pretty major release, and just before we froze the release, I had put in a bug fix kind of last minute. And I'd forgotten to remove a snippet of code that would launch the debugger, which when that gets launched basically freezes everything for any users. Now that made its way into production, and thankfully, because they did follow best practices, the smoke testing revealed that there was a bug in the code, and lo and behold, it was mine. And so we were able to quickly fix it. It probably impacted some users, and it was probably, again, another outage of about 15 minutes or so. But that definitely taught me an important lesson about making sure that you review your code properly and you don't sneak things in. So I used to manage a pretty large website. It had about 250,000 users. And one day I managed to change everyone's profile picture to a picture of me. So the way that happened was that in trying to roll out a new feature, I did have a dev environment, a test environment, and then eventually a production environment, and everything was working well in dev and in test. And when I went to move those changes up into production, I made sure that I tested everything with my own credentials first, so that way I can make sure everything was applied correctly and it would be rolled out correctly. And those changes had to do with a lot of user settings and making sure that the defaults were set properly so that when users went to interact with it, nothing broke. Well, I did it to my own account, everything worked fine, and so I went to basically clone those settings in my account to everyone else's. And I made one mistake, which was that I accidentally included my profile picture as one of those settings. And so within seconds, everybody's profile picture became mine. Thankfully, I did go and immediately look at someone else's profile just to validate, and saw that their picture was mine. And I went to another profile, and realized what I'd done. So very quickly, I went and I changed everyone's profile picture back to the very default blank image. And that was because when I made that change, everyone's original profile picture was lost forever, and there's no way for me to restore it. So I restored things back to just that default blank image and wrote a very long apologetic email. So here's a bonus round. I'm gonna quickly rattle off a few other mistakes that I've made in my career. One was that I accidentally uploaded about 250 random images to a customer's portal, and that was because I thought I was in the lower environment. I had a bunch of tabs open and I clicked on the wrong tab and uploaded these images to test something out. Another time I accidentally deleted an entire customer's portal by clicking on the wrong button. I was off by a couple of pixels, and there was no validation, there were no safeguards to prevent a user from doing so, and it took a few hours to restore the customer portal. And another time I left a SQL transaction open on a production server's database. And basically that meant that the entire application came to a grinding halt until about an hour or two later when I realized that I'd left that transaction open and I hadn't rolled it back like I thought I had. So the point I'm making in all of this stuff is that I survived these mistakes. And not only did I survive, I actually thrived, because mistakes will happen. Maybe you've heard that maybe you've heard that quote that a mistake is only a mistake if you only do it once. And believe me, I've made sure that I never made the same mistake twice. And the reason I want to share all of this stuff is that undoubtedly you're going to make a mistake at some time, and you're probably going to beat yourself up over it. It's very, very easy when you're moving quickly to say, oh, that's just a quick fix, let me make it. And realize that that quick fix, it's just as likely for that to be a quick mistake. And sometimes that mistake can be disastrous. So, take a beat, slow down. It's okay to be slower if it means you're not going to make those kinds of mistakes. A mentor of mine, he always would say that, whenever something was going on, people were scrambling, he'd always say, he'd tell us to stop running around like chickens with our heads cut off. And it's very true, because whenever you're in the heat of this moment trying to resolve something, it's very easy to just overlook something. You're moving too quickly, you cut corners, or maybe you're moving slowly, but you just didn't double check one thing. So make sure you move slower and just check for those kinds of things so that you don't make mistakes. Now, when you do make mistakes, your ego will be bruised. You'll be overwhelmed with self-doubt, but know that you'll bounce back. And when you do, you'll be able to learn from it, and then you'll be able to laugh about it. And use that as a way to then encourage other people who are going to make their own mistakes. Now, I'll wrap up there. My name's Alicia Novin. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it helpful. I'd love to hear about what mistakes you've made. And otherwise, I'll let you know about a quick podcast that I'm doing called Increments, which is where we create some space to talk about our growth and how we want to grow as developers. I hope you'll check it out. It's at increments.dev. You'll also find it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Thanks a lot.